So I am Kandra. I like they, them, or she, her pronouns. I identify as transfeminine, and I am interested in working with people who are on a journey of trying to get into their bodies, which is my journey also. Um, so far, I've mostly worked with white men in doing that. And I'm also very interested in like building emotional intelligence in the body. I've been dancing my whole life. Dance is always, or just moving to music, I guess it's dancing to music. I grew up with like my parents like hosting big dance parties, and I was like the kid who was like out on the dance floor dancing with all the grown-ups.
I love that.
And then it was around when I was like 14, 15, maybe 15, and I like sort of was learning more about like dance as performance and modern dance and contemporary and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I could be a dancer. That's like something that I could do. And then I like started to pursue that. And I was like taking dance classes in high school. And luckily the high school I went to, they let, for my last 2 years there, they let me do like extracurricular classes at a local college, so I could
Oh,
take
that's really
college level
cool.
dance courses. um yeah, and then after high school I was taking some dance but exploring other things at a liberal arts school and Hampshire College. And I took this course called Embodied Community Dancing Community, and it was about like using dance as a form to engage with different communities. And it just sort of like blew my mind. And I was like, oh my God, like I could be like moving with people and getting them in their bodies and working through stuff. And so like we went to uh, like elderly home, and we also worked with children, and also a women's juvenile detention center.
Oh, wow.
Um,
And I'm curious what you noticed. Like, did you have any observations about how people were in their bodies or not embodied?
um, yeah, I mean, I I definitely was like, okay, like I've been in sort of a dance bubble where like people are like, oh, happy to engage in movement and being in our bodies. I think more so than I expected,
Oh, that's
which
cool.
was cool to see. Yeah. So it's sort of like, okay, like if you create a platform or if you create the space for it to happen, then like people can engage even if it isn't an everyday part of our society.
Yeah.
So I was like, for me as like a white man, like who can I work with? I could like work with white men. And I just started sort of like unpacking how much like how much masculinity and patriarchy in our society like removes white men from their bodies and like into our heads. And then also thinking about like white men hold so much power in our society, so it's like giving giving them space to grow into something new and different. There were 11 of us, and we were all white or white passing, and ranging in ages from 19 to 63.
Wow.
And there was like, I don't know, like 5 of us who were like 26 and younger. And then there was one 35-year-old, and there was like a group of like 55 plus.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah. And yeah, we were just sort of missing the like 40-year-old range, which was like the younger parents, I guess, who were
Yeah.
busy parenting. Um,
They're like, I really don't have time for dancing.
yeah, we invited people from our communities and had like a space to share what we'd been discovering. And we had like a movement portion, which was like a little performance.
Yeah.
And then I shared quite a bit about the work. And we also did some embodiment stuff with the whole group. There was like 80 people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really great. The thing that I think surprised me and was unexpected, like I came in expecting that there was going to be a split between body and mind, and the like Cartesian split, as it's referred to in the somatic realm. And that was definitely true. And we worked a lot on that and just like trying to center in our bodies. But it was more like how much emotions were really stuck in the body, and especially grief. And that was especially true with the older population, who were just like, I feel so much grief when I like go into my body.
Oh.
And yeah, I know.
Were they able to say what kind of grief? Like, had they lost people, or it was just heartbreaks over the years, or?
No, I feel like it was more about the grief of being so disconnected from the body for so long, and like actually like starting to access that internal realm. And it was just like, wow, like I've missed out on this. But also I'm sure, yeah, just like big emotional things that have just sort of gotten stuffed away down there. I ended up becoming very interested in just like working on like loosening up like the hips and the pelvis, and like practicing like moving our hips in ways that society says is like boys aren't supposed to move them that way.
That's interesting. I've always,
Yeah.
like when I've been thinking about, the man box, quote unquote, or, what's appropriate for a boy to feel or look like, whether that's my youngest son really likes sparkles and pink and has a sparkly pink book bag. And I kind of thought of it more in terms of what you can express emotionally, or or like wear your hair or whatever. I really haven't thought about it as movement. I mean, so much of the Built Up Boys curriculum is exploring your feelings in the body so that connection stays there, because my feeling is if you have that connection, you're able to hold on to your humanity. And if you understand your emotional landscape, then you're going to be able to understand and better connect, empathize with someone else's. So that's kind of the premise.
Yeah.
But I never thought about, like if men are walking down the street or boys are walking down the street and they start doing like hula hoops with their hips and there's no hula hoop or whatever, like what are people going to think? Like that's very interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, the project was called How is Patriarchy Held in the Body? And so I was like really looking at these things of like, right, like we're like very sort of frozen in the torso, and like we also did like chest isolations and stuff, just to like sort of break up this like single unit that is like that we're like told to maintain.
Totally.
And yeah, like I had this conversation with this older man who was not part of the project, but I was telling him about it, and he was like, yeah, like white men are like God's frozen people. Like like just like so much containment, really, just like holding it all in. And yeah, not yeah. And but yeah, so like looking at how our actions sort of fit into like white patriarchy tendencies. And I don't know, like we also explored things like, or like one of the participants was talking about this sort of like mental mindset of like always needing to like be moving quickly, and like everything's kind of like a race. And he was like talking about like if he's like in a public space where there's stairs and like there's like a woman or someone in front of him who's like going pretty slowly up the stairs, like he's just going to take them two at a time and like pass that person. And it's just like so it's like the things that are like in like the stuck places in the body, but also how we use our body in society.
Yeah.
and how like the brain is just always like, okay, like pass this person, like
I was
keep it
gonna say,
moving, like next thing, like
right, if you're taught to like get ahead, that if
mhm,
patriarchy is about dominance, then it would make
yep,
sense that even a subtle movement of going 2 steps and surpassing people would be part of
mhm,
that. That's so interesting.
yeah,
Now, my question to you
mhm,
is, where did this fall on your journey towards becoming trans feminine?
mhm.
Meaning, did it influence a direction for you? Did it give you insight by going deep and connecting with other men on that level? I'm just curious how the work influenced you personally.
Yeah. Um, I think it, yeah, it definitely like, so this happened like three, 3 years ago when the project took place. And, and almost immediately after it, like after I graduated, I, up to that point, I had been saying when I was introducing myself that I invite all pronouns, in the hopes that people would use all pronouns for me, but people generally just used he. And then sometimes people would use they, them, and I always like was excited about that.
Oh,
Um, and
you're like,
like,
yes.
yes, like finally, like, and so then shortly after the project ended, I was like, okay, I'm just going to use they, them pronouns. And, and then a year after that, I was like, maybe I'm trans. Anyways,
Wait,
um,
question.
yeah.
So shortly after the project and you graduate, was any of it to distance yourself from white male patriarchy? Like,
Hmm.
was there something in
Yeah,
you
that's a
that
good
felt such
question.
disgust towards that you wanted to like remove that? I'm curious your relationship around that.
That's a really good question. Um, I think that, well, the doing the project definitely helped me unpack a lot of the sort of baggage and stuff that I've been carrying around about my masculinity. And um and then I sort of like had this notion where I was like, I like need to keep being a man in order to do this work so that I can reach more men, because I'll be like more presentable to them and they'll be more comfortable with me. And then I was just like, oh, that doesn't really make sense. And also, then I will be unhappy
Right.
because I need to explore my femininity. Um, but yeah, I feel like in like really like diving into the patriarchy, my sort of disgust definitely grew to a degree, but also examining it so much like gave me more compassion towards men who are stuck in it.
Yeah.
Like there's this guy who's local to this area and does masculinity work, and he's just like very like handsome and like dresses nice and is like very kind of like suave, isn't totally, is like maybe a little much, but like 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 and so like seeing him, and you know he's like working with the Amherst College like lacrosse team like around patriarchy stuff and like sexual violence, and I was like, wow, like he's like getting these things, and like I like it's, for me presenting this way, it's going to be a lot harder to be accepted in those spaces. But I'm also just like coming around to being like, maybe that's just not my work, and I'm just sort of finding my own way.
Your
Um,
own way. And also,
and whoever wants to work with me, then I want to work with them. That's sort of
yeah,
what I've come to.
exactly.
Yeah, I feel like most of my life I've been like searching for my authentic self, and like one of my good friends who's also an ex, but like said to me once, she's like, I don't think I know anyone else who like is like constantly like searching out their like authentic self as much as you. Um, yeah. And I mean, it's almost like I don't know if a loop is the right word, but it's like something that I get like kind of stuck in. It's like a pattern. But yeah, I feel like that. I mean, the like loop or pattern is just always being like, okay, like I feel this way, but society says to be this way. And there's just like this tug and like constant like tug and pull inside me of like, do I follow my like heart or my gut, or do I follow what my brain says is like logical and makes sense in terms of getting by in the world or the work I want to do in this case. So it's like, so like still like there's part of my brain, well, I've mostly gotten over it, but for a while there was like part of my brain that was like it would make a lot more sense if you just kept being a man to work with men. I feel like that I also, being mostly attracted to women, like felt like that women were only going to be attracted to me if I presented as a man. And because like I felt like that most of my life, my like masculinity or whatever gender, like how I present has been endorsed by women in terms of like me being like attractive or something like that.
Oh, so
And
you've
so
gotten a lot of attention for being an attractive man.
yes.
Gotcha.
And so in terms of stepping into my femininity and how I feel better expressing myself, it's like I I mean ultimately it's like I have to step into a place of trust and like believing that my journey is going to lead me wherever it does,
To the right
and
work, to the right people who will
the
love you
right
for
work, the
your
right people.
authentic self. Yes.
Exactly. It was like July of 2020 when I started questioning if I was a woman, and that like looped in my head for like a year and a half. And that's something that I'm finally sort of just like it sort of has gone away, which is great.
The loop
Um,
part.
yeah, the like looping of like, am I a woman? Am I a woman? Um,
And now you're just surrendering.
and now I feel like I've surrendered. I've like I feel like I'm surrendering to trying not to label things as much, and just be like, okay, I'm taking estrogen and I feel happy with where I am right now. Um, and I don't have to like know like if I'm a woman, and also like I'm never gonna be a cis woman. So that's just like not even yeah. Which which I feel like is something that like I feel like I went through a period of sort of like mourning the fact that I wasn't a cis woman, um, and that I wasn't born a girl, which my mom was like certain that I was going to be a girl when I came out.
Oh,
And
wow.
Kandra is actually the name I would have been given. Right now, I feel like very comfortable in they them, and people are starting to use she her a little bit for me, and it feels sort of like how when I was using all pronouns and people would use they them, it felt sort of exciting. So now she her kind of feels that way.
I think that kind of acceptance in space and letting yourself grow, one, it's only going to help you find more compassion for yourself and more
Hmm.
authenticity. And two, it's going to make you a great practitioner working with other people. Like you'll open up space, you'll let there be pauses, you'll let it be a
Yeah.
process versus pushing someone into, you know, a zone that they can't handle, like, right,
Hmm.
where if they do enter some place in their body that they were
Hmm.
protecting against and they have a psychotic break, like anything can happen,
Exactly.
and so
It's
I think
true.
that kind of pause, that sacred pause,
Hmm.
while moving forward, if that
Hmm.
can even happen, a pause while moving forward, um
Yeah.
is beautiful. It's beautiful.
Hmm.
So last
Yeah.
question is, what would you recommend or what advice would you have to parents who are raising sons?
I've never really thought about this, so I appreciate the question. I I personally would give the advice of really allowing the child to do what they want to do, follow like following their heart, and really trying to pay attention to a child like, and well, yeah, like maybe leaning one direction, but like not even like assuming that they're gonna continue down that path. It's like maybe like on Wednesday they want to go to school in a dress, and you live in a place where that is safe.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation. It's
Yeah.
like, is it safe? Um, and but then the next day they want to like go in their like shorts and a t-shirt, baggy, and
And a
and so
cowboy hat,
and a cowboy hat,
maybe.
and yeah, and so I feel like it's like going back to labels, like in white supremacist culture, in American culture, it's like we're like constantly trying to like compartmentalize everything and be like, okay, this person is this way and they're gonna do this thing and act this way. Um, but like we know that children are so dynamic and constantly shifting and changing, and so I feel like if you as a parent can really follow that sort of stream or river as it winds its way through through the child's life, that would be amazing. um, and just like teaching about the possibilities that one can be in terms of gender, teaching about trans people and non-binary people, um, and also like trying to learn the history there. um, yeah, that's what I would recommend. And of course like the things that yeah, that like to me are obvious, but like letting your child cry and like letting them do feminine things if that's who they are, if that's what they want to do.
Right. And to also maybe as a culture stop feminizing emotion, right? Like
Yeah.
idea that that's human, like those six,
Hmm.
I keep going back to those, 60-year-old men that you worked with, but just how
Hmm.
heartbreaking that grief is.
Hmm.
And what could have been possible for their ability to love themselves and others if they had allowed that. Um,
Yeah.
if a parent is really interested, taking the gender conversation kind of aside for a second, if a parent's really interested in raising children, however they identify,
Hmm.
um, with that mind-body connection, is there
Hmm.
advice you would give or something that you could recommend that they do so that that split doesn't happen?
Mm. I believe that when we're born, we're like naturally connected in our body, throughout our whole bodies, including our heads, and our minds are integrated into our bodies. And also science is like learning that from a very young age we start to disconnect um, the mind from the body. And I think a lot of that is in the modeling that parents do. And so I'd say number one is like, as a parent, trying to reconnect yourself in your own body and doing that personal work. Um,
That's such great advice.
yeah. But then also in terms of assisting your child to sort of maintain the body mind connection, I feel like emotions are a big part of it. Um, not, yeah, just mostly like trying not to contain them in their bodies and letting them express through their body how they need. And like obviously when you're in public and it's inappropriate, like that's like a whole different story. But also having a conversation about it and being like like I recognize that you need to do this, and also like this isn't the space for it.
Yeah.
um yeah, I feel like in terms of our socialization and the disconnection between body and mind, we tend to both like contain, like a lot of containment in how we express through our bodies, and then also emotional suppression or compartmentalization. I remember when I was like 15, 16, and I was at a dance party with like some friends, and like girls were like teaching me how to like rotate my hips. And it was like something I was like, ooh, like this is like a new feeling. And yet it was like really fun, but I was like, I'm not good at this. Like, and you know, I mean, obviously like there is the fact that like male anatomy, like hips aren't as wide and etc. But I feel like that socialization has a much bigger impact than one's anatomy on
Yes.
how fluid the hips can be,
Yeah.
which we see around the world in cultures where dancing and moving the hips is acceptable for both genders or all genders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, now I'm just like imagining like little boys like moving their hips around like really like fast and like just like having fun. And also learning how to isolate the chest, like forwards, back, side, and just like shifting the rib cage over the pelvis, and just to break up this like straight spine that white society gives us.
Yeah, the frozen people.